Heyo potatoes, I'm Caleb Julian Ngo.
Hi guys, I'm Anthony Ongjoco, and together we will talk about phylum Mollusca, Arthropoda, and Echinodermata, the genera found under them, their structures, and the accompanying functions.
By the end of this activity, you should be able to first identify the basic morphological characteristics of mollusks, arthropods, and echinoderms. Second, you should be able to differentiate the general classes of mollusks, arthropods, and echinoderms from each other through representative species. First, we will talk about the creatures found under phylum Mollusca. The phylum Mollusca is the second largest animal phylum. It includes creatures like snails, clams, oysters, and squids. The creatures found under this phylum can be divided into a head region, a ventral foot, a dorsal visceral mass, spicule, or shell, except bivalves. Mollusks usually undergo respiration through their body surfaces or their lungs. Furthermore, they are either monoecious or dioecious, meaning they could have one or both male and female reproductive organs. Under class Gastropoda, we see the genus Achatina or Pila, more commonly known as the garden snail or kuhol. From top to bottom, the first pointed structure, most distal from the snail, is the spire, which is the spiral cone structure on top of the shell. In between the spire and the snail is the second structure called the body whorl. At the bottom of the snail, we see the third pointed structure, which is the foot, which helps the snail for locomotion. Also under class Gastropoda, we see the genus Cypraea, more commonly known as cowries. From the ventral side, looking at the edges of its aperture, we get to see a spiky structure which are its teeth, which function as scrapers for algae, sponges, and invertebrates in hard surfaces. On its dorsal side, we see a brown line at the posterior side of the shell. This is its dorsal band. Under class Bivalva, we see the genus Perna, more commonly known as mussels. A photo of an open mussel is shown to us, and in the middle, we can see brown string-like structures protruding. This is the first pointed structure called the byssal threads. Mussels use these to cling onto rocks and other substrates. At the left side of the photo, we see a brown hatchet-like structure. This is the second pointed structure called the foot. The mussel uses its foot to pull itself through the surfaces it attaches to. Also under class Bivalva, we see the genus Argopecten, also known as the clams or scallops. Near the umbo, in between the two shells, we see the first pointed structure called the hinge ligament. This structure holds the two valves together. Sticking out of the clam's shell is a prominent pink structure which looks like a tongue. This is the second pointed structure called the foot, which helps the clam move around its surroundings. Under class Cephalopoda, we see the genus Loligo, more commonly known as the squid. Notice the two long tube-like structures protruding posteriorly from the squid. This pointed structure are its tentacles. The squid uses these to strike and capture prey. Anteriorly, we see numerous shorter tube-like structures, which is the second pointed structure called the arms, which are used to hold onto the captured prey after being struck by the tentacles. At the most anterior of the squid, we see the triangular flap. This is the third structure called the fin, which helps the squid steer, stabilize, and propel themselves underwater. Under class Scaphopoda, we see the genus Dentalium, more commonly known as the elephant tusk shell. The pointed structure in this picture is the tubular shell, which helps protect the mollusk inside from predators. Under class Polyplacophora, we see the genus Chiton, more commonly known as the chiton or sea cradles. In the dorsal view of the chiton, we see the first pointed structure called the plate, which serves as protection for the chiton and helps them flex upward when they need to move across uneven surfaces. Near the edges of its plate, we see the second pointed structure, which is the girdle. Located along the chiton's mantle, this girdle is used to catch small invertebrates and small fish. In its ventral view, we get to see the pallial groove, which separates the foot from the girdle and in the middle we see the very prominent structure called the foot, which the creature uses to move. Now we move on to phylum Arthropoda. Phylum Arthropoda is the largest phylum found in the animal kingdom. Its group has animals which have jointed appendages. The body of an arthropod exhibits stigmatization, which means that the head, thorax, and abdomen in insects, or cephalothorax and abdomen in arachnids, are segments fused together. Lastly, arthropods undergo gas exchange through the tracheal system. For the first creature, we see the commonly known shrimp found under the class Malacostraca. Proximal from its head, we see pointy structures sticking out. This is the first pointed structure called the antennules. Antennules help the shrimp detect prey and changes in salinity and water temperature. Below this, we see structures which look like the shrimp's legs. These are the pleopods, which helps the shrimp swim, catch food, and brood eggs. The last structure seen is near the tail. This is the uropod, which helps the shrimp swim backward. Also under class Malacostraca, we see a creature commonly known as the crayfish or the lobster. Its dorsal surface boasts plate-like armor, which is the first structure called the carapace. This exoskeleton covers the head and the thorax of the lobster and helps protect it from predators. The next pointed structure can be seen posteriorly at the center of the lobster's tail fan. This is called the uropod, which assists lobsters in locomotion. Lastly, at the bottom of the lobster, we see its walking legs, which also assists in its locomotion. Also under class Malacostraca, we see the creature commonly known as the crab. The photo gives us a dorsal view of the crab. As such, we see its prominent shell almost covering the whole body. This first pointed structure is called the carapace, which functions as protection against predators. At the very front of the crab, we see two black beads, which is the second pointed structure crabs use to see, which are its eyes. Just behind the crab's claws, also called chelipeds, we get to observe the propodes, which makes up most of the claw. In the second photo, we are shown the ventral view of the crab. The pointed structure seen at the center of its body is the abdomen, which holds the crab's digestive and reproductive systems. Under class Chilopoda, we get to see the commonly known centipede. At its anterior-most area, we see two protruding tubes, which is the first pointed structure called the antenna, which helps the centipede detect prey. The centipede is vertically elongated. As such, this whole length is the second pointed structure called its trunk, which consists of multiple trunk segments stuck together.
Similar to the class of Chilopoda, this next creature is very similar to the previous one, as it has two pairs of legs per segment instead of one. This creature belongs to class Diplopoda from the Greek words diplos and pos, meaning two and feet respectively. It is also more commonly known as the millipede. Next, we have our eight-legged favorite, the spider, belonging to class Euchelicerata, a part of the arthropods. The first arrow points to the spider's legs, which is a part of the four pairs of jointed legs with 2 or 3 terminal claws. The next arrow refers to the prosoma, which is a fusion of the head and thoracic body parts. Next up is the grasshopper, part of class Insecta. Here in the diagram, the first arrow points to its antenna, which is their sensory organ in between the eyes. The second arrow points to its compound eye, which they use to make out motion and basic form. Interestingly, grasshoppers are incapable of moving their eyes like us humans do. The next arrow points to its mandible, which is in charge of crushing and grinding leaves of its host plant. The fourth arrow is the thorax, which is the area that holds body parts associated with movement like the legs and the wings. The fifth arrow points to the forewing of the grasshopper. This forewing acts like a tough cover to shield the delicate wings when they are not in use. The last arrow points to its spiracles, which are connected to its trachea and provides oxygen to the insect. The next animal is commonly known as the head louse and is a part of the class Insecta. The first arrow points to its antenna that helps it detect signals in its environment. The next arrow is the claw that provides extra grip as it moves from hair to hair. The last arrow refers to the abdomen section that contains spiracles and chitinous pigmented bars or hair rows. Similar to head louse, fleas suck blood off animals. This ectoparasite is a part of the class Insecta, which, in this diagram, highlights its general comb and leg. The general comb is a tough cuticle of bristles, and the leg helps the flea jump from hair to hair with a movement like a crossbow. Onto the third part, we will identify and label the parts of the following specimens in phylum Echinodermata. Echinoderms include sea stars, sea urchins, and sea cucumbers. Furthermore, most creatures under this phylum are marine species. Echinoderms are very close to vertebrates due to having a similar embryonic development. One feature that distinguishes them from the others is their water vascular or ambulacral system, which is a system of canals which end at their podias, which function in feeding, locomotion, respiration, excretion, and chemosensation. Most echinoderms are dioecious and are capable of autotomy and regeneration of lost parts. The first animal we see is the sea star of class Asteroidea. The dorsal view shows the arm and the central disc. The arm is used in many functions, feeding and locomotion, just to name a few. The central disc helps the sea star regrow its appendages if one of them is injured or cut off. The ventral view shows us the ambulacral groove that helps the sea star move and the mouth that allows it to eat. The next animal is known as the brittle star or serpent star. These belong in class Ophiuroidea. Here we can see the brittle star's arm, central disc, and mouth. Up next, we have the sea urchin delicacy belonging to class Echinoidea. Here, we can see its teeth that they use to eat through stone to get prey out of the rocky covers. We can also see its spines, which they use for locomotion, sensing, and protection against predators. In the next photo, we can see the skeleton of a sea urchin, making some forms clearer to see. We can see the opening of the mouth in the second arrow. The first and third arrow show the interambulacral zone and the ambulacral zone respectively. The next picture shows the sea biscuit or the sand dollar that belongs to the class Echinoidea. Here, we can see the petaloid that contains tiny little holes that allow tube feet to emerge. This is how the sea biscuit breathes. And lastly, we have the sea cucumber that belongs to class Holotheroidea. The arrow points to the sea cucumber's tentacles, which they use for feeding and for moving. And there you have it, guys. That was the gist of Systematic Zoology 3.
Thank you for watching. Feel free to ask us any questions in the comment section below.